Dankeschön and guten Morgen. I think that's as far as my German goes.
Excellent.
And believe me, I'm the one who regrets not being in Vienna in person, such a beautiful and gorgeous city. So thank you for having me instead virtually. So the platform, what is the role of the platform? The platform is, first of all, a stakeholder group who has an advisory role to the European Commission when it comes to the development of the taxonomy on one hand, but also the wider sustainable finance framework. Our role and our existence, if you wish, was established under the Article 20 of the taxonomy regulation. So it's very much embedded in the regulation. Now, how the platform works in practice is that it has a 2-year mandate that then it's renovated. Every mandate comes with a list of tasks, if you wish, that the Commission establishes, and that the platform then sort of adjusts, if you wish, right? So the Commission tells us what they wish us to work on, and then we go back to the Commission saying, well, we would also like to work on A and B, and we refine that, and then we materialize it in what are known as the scoping papers. Yeah, they're all available in the Commission's websites, and we have a scoping paper for each one of the groups. Very quickly, just to let everyone know that the mandate of this current platform is basically based on 3 areas. The first one is the development of technical criteria of the taxonomy, so that is expanding the taxonomy to cover more activities, and for the first time, the review of the Climate Delegated Act. The second one is around usability and implementation. I would say that has become the number one goal of this platform. So very much, let's make it work on the ground. Let's work on enhancing, the consistency among the different pieces of the big jigsaw that we call the sustainable finance framework. Let's work on simplifying, avoiding duplication, and developing tools to help the implementation of the different pieces. And last but not least, we are also working on monitoring capital flows, and we just very recently published a report on the methodology that will underscore that really important piece of work.
Very interesting. And you, of course, have an important role at the Spanish security supervisor. What is your specific role as a chairperson of this platform?
So my role is a little bit organizing, if you wish, establishing, overseeing the work and the deliverables of the different subgroups. So that entails a lot of meetings, believe me, most of them virtually. So a big role on overseeing that everything is working, and that we stick to our timeline. Yeah, believe me, we are extraordinarily busy, even if, and I really want to highlight everyone to understand that each member and observer of the platform is there on a pro bono basis. So this is on top of their daily job. So something to take into account. And yet we have published, I believe, 6 reports since last year. So 6 reports in a year. I think it's a pretty good, productive, measure. So to say. Now, also one of my roles is obviously the overseeing and developing the outreach activities of the platform. The platform is in constant dialogue with the different stakeholders, from financial market participants, obviously insurers, banks and companies, yeah, and we are also, organize our own events, and then we have our newsletter, and we have a profile in LinkedIn, and we hope to strengthen the outreach activities in the future.
Very interesting. Now, you said you have a lot of meetings, and you know that there are lots of technicians involved, and some people would say it doesn't go quickly enough, this transition. Other people say it goes much too quickly. Now, how does that affect you in your platform? Is everybody still excited, or are people getting tired, or something in between? So how do you experience this antagonism that you clearly see now at European level?
Yes. So firstly, and very quickly to say, I was saying before that everyone who works at the platform is or does that from in a voluntary basis. So we are incredibly lucky in Europe to have all these experts from across Europe and different stakeholders that they are committed to sustainable finance, and they really believe that we will not reach our net zero and other environmental goals without the financial sector, and the extent to which the sustainable finance framework is a killer pillar of the delivery of the Green Deal. And if you allow me, it is also a critical pillar for the competitiveness of Europe in the future. We need to remember that the sustainability and digitalization are the two drivers of the future competition, of competitiveness in the world. Having said that, it's very interesting because when the mandate of the platform started, we were at a crossroads that I believe that we're still in. Why do I mean by that? Well, on one hand, we have the bigger, pieces of the jigsaw. So the building blocks of the sustainable finance framework have been developed, but they have been developed and negotiated, even if thought of and designed as a whole and part of one strategy. They were developed and negotiated separately. So what happens now is that when we try to put the pieces of the jigsaw together, sometimes they don't quite fit, right? So we need to polish them. And the second point is that we are starting to implement all the different pieces without sometimes having finished them. A case in point is the taxonomy. We don't have the full taxonomy, but we're implementing it little by little, which is necessary to get that, to adapt and to learn from it. I always say that this is a transition within the transition, and this is where we are in that transition period within the overall transition. And that's really important. What is really important now is that we create the necessary flexibility and a real bridge of communication that goes both ways, whereas companies and the different financial institutions start implementing the different pieces of the sustainable finance framework, they feedback what is their experience, what works, what doesn't work. That's really important, and it's equally important from the Commission and and regulators to listen to that, and be able to create those little changes and tweaks that is going to make the sustainable finance framework. More or less 2 months ago, we published a report called the Compendium of Market Practice, who had exactly that purpose. What was the purpose? What did we do? We examined 7 stakeholders, how they are implementing the different tools, the taxonomy, first and foremost, but also other parts of the sustainable finance framework. And we said, okay, tell us what your experience is beyond the reporting requirements, beyond the legal obligations. What is working for you and what is not working for you? And guess what? One of the key messages that came out is that actually it's working on the ground. Is it perfect? Not. They said, this is working, and all of that, needs to be slightly amended. I invite you, all of you, to read that report and take a look. But for myself, the number one takeaway was that the taxonomy was a breaking through tool, that it was working for the largest companies. We're seeing how the CapEx alignment with the taxonomy was much higher expected, also the revenues, but the CapEx primarily, and that there was the CapEx particularly was high in high impact sectors, and it was higher than the eligibility on their eligibility in terms of the revenues eligibility, which proved that companies in the higher impact sectors are investing in transforming their business models, in aligning them with the taxonomy and using that taxonomy. I can, throw some figures to you. We calculated that the top 600 European companies have invested 166 billion euros, in those transformations. We also saw sectors like utilities with a 69% of CapEx alignment with the taxonomy. Some really good news, but equally came the challenges, yeah? And in the report, you would see that what we did is, once we listened to the industry, we said, okay, what are the those areas that they really create an obstacle, a challenge for the industry to progress. And we put them in the report, and then we readjust our own deliverables to give preference to those. So, for example, do no significant harm clearly needs to be adapted to the different users and users. There are other areas. I mean, I don't want to bore you. I'm conscious of time, but basically we identify 7 key areas that need to be prioritized, and that's what we're doing.
Now, you're saying that these companies are investing a serious amount of money in sustainable investments. Is the financial sector, because we are here talking with the insurance industry and supervisors, is the financial sector in general and the insurance sector more specifically doing enough in terms of sustainable investments?
Well, I'm afraid you're going to have to invite me next year around in order to properly respond to your question, because as you know, the first year reporting of taxonomy, we analyze the first year of reporting of taxonomy, and it's only now that we're starting to analyze the reportings from financial institutions, right, in relation to the climate taxonomy. Now, having said that, there are areas where we've seen a lot of progress in the industry. For example, we see that particularly asset owners and insurers have made good use of the climate transition benchmarks and the Paris-aligned benchmarks. We have now 120 billion of assets under management invested in that. We're also seeing how financial market participants, including insurers, are using the taxonomy very much to engage with companies and as a guidance. Yeah, what we're seeing now is that they use it as a guidance, particularly on the CapEx side, in order to assess companies. What I'm expecting to see in the near future is how they link that to the transition plans that we're going to have, we're going to have reported under the ESRS, and the importance, and then that importance of the CapEx plan and the financial planning, giving investors that assurance that the company is walking the talk, right? That link with the transition plans, not only the greenhouse gas emissions reductions, because we need to remember that the reductions and the targets are, these are delinked from any growth of a company. It is the CapEx alignment that gives you that assurance that while a company is growing, it's expanding, that growth is actually aligned with the 1.50 trajectory. Last thing I would say that I thought it was really interesting is that we're starting to see reports from the sell side analysts that are starting to link the performance in terms of the taxonomy, both revenues and CapEx, and the financial performance. And what we've seen, for example, from Goldman Sachs, over an analysis of 1,400 companies, I recall everyone that 1,700 companies in Europe have disclosed under the taxonomy. So the top 1,400, there was a correlation between the performance of the past 5 years with the revenues alignment, and since 2022, there was a consecutively accumulative outperformance from what they call the companies in transition, that is companies whose green CapEx is higher than the green revenues. So really good news, because somehow it says that the market is picking up, or picking up the the taxonomy alignment and the transition plans as a variable when it comes to future performance.
Yes. Go ahead.
Yeah. No, I was just going to say that I think that next year we will have the first reports on taxonomy.
No, I can tell you, you were talking about transition plans, that we just had a discussion about that. It's quite a challenge to the industry to produce these plans. But one of the issues that when we talk about sustainability, we usually refer to environmental issues and not so much to the social and governance issues. And my question to you, is there going to be a taxonomy also on social and governance? And if so, when will that happen?
Right. Well, I think that when that will happen, it's a very difficult question. I will like not to make a bet on that. But what I can tell you is two quick things, or a couple of things. The first, I think that we need to remember that climate change is first and foremost a social issue. And it is so because climate change operates as a multiplier, as an amplifier of the social problems we have. So I will context everyone, I will challenge everyone that says that we are too focused on climate change and we forget social aspects. Climate change is first and foremost a social problem. Now, what we have failed on is on integrating the social impacts of climate change purely within the framework. And that's one of the areas that we hope to address. You were mentioning the difficulty of transition plans. That was something that came out from our report, from our study on the compendium of market practices. We're working now, and I see Petra Eyopa is a key participant on our working group on transition plans, and part of what we are aimed to look at is precisely that. How do we really integrate the social aspects within the transition plans? Now, having said that, remember that the minimum standards include of the taxonomy and in the principal adverse impacts of SFDR, they are included social and governance, practices. What we don't have is a social taxonomy in relation to economic activities. We need to make a big difference between what is a practice at a corporate level versus an activity. So a practice would be, for example, everything that is governance. There's no such a thing as an activity in governance. You have good or better and bad practices in governance in relation to lobbying, in relation to corporate governance, and so forth. And so you have, and social. Social, you have both, because you can consider that investing in R&D for the development of medicines is a contribution to a social objective. So that's the one area that is missing. And I think that before we see one, we need to complete the environmental taxonomy and see that is working on the ground, learn from the implementation. So the day that we develop the social taxonomy, it can be operational and successful from day one.
Excellent. Helena, the time is running out, but I think for the people here, it was very important to have you on screen and to hear the enthusiasm with which you are doing what you're doing. And it's also a wake-up call to us to see that there are people behind the scenes that are actually looking how things are happening in practice, so that it isn't theory, but it's real practice. So again, Helena, thank you so much for being with us today, and I wish you good luck with the work of the platform.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. And if I may finish with just one ask to all of you, please do not throw the baby with the bathwater. There are many elements that are really working, and this is a breakthrough policy and much needed. Let's look at what is not working and let's make it work. Let's amend that and make it work. Thank you so much.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Muchas gracias. Adios.
Muchas gracias. Adios. Bye.